Ceann Comhairle, there is considerable public debate and discussion about the forthcoming budget and indeed about the possibility of the country having a 4-year budgetary plan over the next 4 years. Now, obviously, such discussion has to be based on sound, solid information, which only the government itself can provide. As we know, the projections which the government gave us last year for economic growth were seriously wrong, as a result of which the projected budgetary adjustment over the next 4 years is now, we're told, significantly greater than the $7.5 billion that was originally expected. Taoiseach, there are a number of pieces of information which we need to have if there is to be meaningful discussion on budgetary matters. And I'd like to ask you this morning if you would provide that information. First of all, can you tell us what is the growth forecast for 2011 and what is the projected growth for the next 4 years? Secondly, can you tell us what budgetary adjustments are you proposing for the coming year? What's the total budgetary adjustment? What's the figure that the government is proposing for 2011? And what is the total adjustment that is projected for the next 4 years? And finally, can you tell us what is your forecast for unemployment next year? It's currently around 450,000 people on the live register. It's been over 400,000 now for the past 16 months. Can you tell us what is the government's forecast or projection for unemployment next year? Ceann Comhairle, we do want to have a responsible discussion about the economic and financial situation, but you can't have it. You can't have it in a vacuum. There's basic information that needs to be provided. The Taoiseach, in his response to me, has taken us on a tour around Europe and around the Mediterranean and into the United States and all over the place, rather than focus on the actual question. The first piece of information, Taoiseach, that we need to have is we need to know what are the growth forecasts for next year, and indeed if we're going to have a 4-year budgetary plan for the 4 years. Now we know, and you can justify it all you like, we know that the growth forecasts that you gave us last year were way out, as a consequence of which the budgetary projections for next year and for the following 4 years also have to be adjusted. We need to know what the growth forecast is. Now, I'd like to ask you, obviously you're not in a position to tell us today what the growth forecast is. Can I ask you, when are you going to settle on the growth forecast, and when are you going to be in a position to tell us that? Because until we know that, we can't calculate, neither can you or anybody else, what the size of the budgetary adjustment is going to have to be. Now, while you are waiting to decide what the growth forecast is, you might give the House some indication as to where you think it is likely to end up in terms of the budgetary adjustment that has to be made for 2011 and into over the next 4 years. You're right that a briefing was given to the finance spokespersons, but the information provided in that briefing is entirely conditional on what the level of growth is likely to be, and therefore what the budgetary adjustments are then going to be as a consequence of that. So perhaps if you're not in a position to tell us what that is today, can you tell us at least when you are going to be in a position to provide us with that information? Because until we have it, we can't have, and nobody can have, a meaningful discussion on where the budget for 2011 and beyond is going to go. Finally, Taoiseach, you didn't make any response to my request as to what the forecast for unemployment will be next year. So I'd invite you to have a stab at that when you're replying the second time. At least when you are going to be in a position to provide us with that information, Because until we have it, we can't have, and nobody can have, a meaningful discussion on where the budget for 2011 and beyond is going to go. Finally, Taoiseach, you didn't make any response to my request as to what the forecast for unemployment will be next year. So I'd invite you to have a stab at that when you're replying the second time.
Yeah.